Hey there everybody, I'm going to take a look at perspective once again today. And we're going to go out and see where we can find examples of 2-point perspective. So we invite you to join us and let's go take a walk. Okay. All right, hey Jim, let's go out the door. So 2-point perspective has to do with being at a corner to your subject. I was thinking, that fence might be kind of interesting. So remember, there's lines that go to one side, and other lines that recede back to the other. You always have a horizon line, but with 2-point perspective, you have 2 vanishing points. And the cool thing about something like a fence is that you have those repeated elements that you can also measure back in space. Okay, so we're walking down the sidewalk, but keep in mind that that is only 1-point perspective. We're not at the corner. So let's find some more corners that might be interesting 2-point perspective drawings. This might be a good place for 2-point perspective. Kind of a nice simple structure, and you can learn those rules. You got lines going back to one side, other lines going back to the other side. What do you think, June? All right, we made it home. Let's go see what else we can find maybe in the yard. Hey there all. It's a nice kind of sunny fall day. I'm looking for some locations to do 2-point perspective. So we did 1-point perspective, and with that you're kind of facing straight onto your subject matter. You see here, and you have just 1 point that goes back out in space. Like you see those angles of the beds, the raised beds going back. That would be 1-point perspective where lines converge on a horizon line, which is my eye level invisible line kind of through there. So now I'm looking for a 2-point perspective where I'm going to be at a corner or an angle to my subject. So I think I'm going to draw my studio. Might be a good opportunity. And since it's pretty nice outside, I can just sit here, my nice lawn chairs, and take a look at my studio from the corner. And maybe even some of those kind of planters as well. And you can see that there are lines that go this way and go back. And there are lines that go this way and go back. So let's see what we can do with our drawing. When we talk about 1, 2, or even 3-point perspective, we're talking about linear perspective. It's a method of representing space in which the scale of an object diminishes as the distance from the viewer increases. So essentially, objects that are farther away from us appear smaller than those that are near. The position at which they meet at the horizon line is called the vanishing point. So just as 1-point perspective focuses on one vanishing point, 2-point perspective ushers in a second one. So it's a pretty nice day out here, so I've decided to, have a seat. I'm going to work on my 2-point perspective in my studio. I've gathered some material. So with this drawing, I want to work with some different variations of colored pencil. It helps to do like a lighter color to a darker color to help you kind of sort out those lines of perspective, which you should leave in the drawing so that you totally understand exactly what's going on with the rules of linear perspective. So I think I'm going to maybe I'll do this pink and to green to darker green. Yeah, I think I might go with these ones. I don't know, I usually work in a range of colors, but I think it's kind of nice to have that little splash of color underneath. So I think I'll go with those 3. I suppose I could get excited and embellish more, but this is what I'm going to work with for now. And then I'm going to use 1 sheet of drawing paper for, my perspective drawing. And I think since my paper is not maybe as large as it could be, it's 12 by 18, I'm going to use a sheet of newsprint and basically tear it in half and extend the edges of the sheet on each side so that I can make my vanishing points as far away as possible. So I'm going to make it horizontal. I'm going to tape these sheets of newsprint to the back side of my drawing. In a way so that if I decide to stop the drawing and then return to it again, they're not going to fall off.
So basically 2 wings. There's one. And here's the other. So if you remember from some of our discussion that in order to make a 2-point perspective drawing look, you know, more natural, try to get those vanishing points as far away from each other as possible. Because if you actually look at something in real life, they're miles and miles apart. But in your drawing, you have only the space of this little sheet of paper, 12 by 18 inches. I've also got my ruler, obviously my pencil sharpener, eraser, place to put my shavings, and my masking tape in case I need to kind of tape it down to keep it in place in case it's windy like it is sort of today. And then I'm good to go. Okay, I think I'm ready to go. I'm pretty well set up. I've got my lightest colored pencil and my ruler. And what I'm going to do is, you know, look straight ahead. So your eye level line is your horizon line. It's not something that you're going to see actually physically in front of you when you're looking at your subject. It's an imaginary line. If you like think about your eyes being kind of split in half, essentially, going straight forward towards your subject matter. So the horizon line is going to be the first line that I draw. So I'm looking straight forward. If it's, excuse all the excess noise because I'm outside, there'll be a little bit of wind and weather, but that's totally okay. So I'm looking straight forward, and honestly, I'm kind of like at a mid-range, so I think my horizon line is gonna be best if I do it somewhat in the center of my page here. And you know, if you really want to get particular, I suppose you can measure it. Maybe I put it down 6 inches. That's exactly halfway. I was pretty good at eyeballing that, huh? So, and then you can use your ruler to help you extend it all the way out to the edges. I'm gonna tape down these flaps a little bit more because I've got a little bit of wind here. And that horizon line is always the first thing that you draw in 2-point perspective. And draw it all the way out to the edges. And those of you that are taking this course with me, if you do these flaps like I'm doing, I want you to leave them on your paper. I want to see them as part of your process photos, that you understand these rules of linear perspective. So you see I've drawn them all the way out. I'm trying to get them as far apart as possible. So you can see one here, you've got one here. And then I'm going to start with the very first kind of major corner that's right in front of me. So I'm looking at my studio and I'm looking at my eye level. My eye level is kind of slicing my eyes in half, and I hold my pencil up at eye level in front of me. I can see, you know, how much of the studio is below my eye level, how much is above. And also think about that first vertical of that one corner that you want to draw. So I think the studio is going to be a little bit over this way, but I can see that I'd say a quarter of it goes a little, or a third of it goes below the line, 2/3 above. So I'm just gonna do that vertical because remember, all verticals are undistorted. They're parallel to the edge of your paper there, see? Anything else that isn't vertical goes back to one or other vanishing points. So what I want to do is, since that's the main corner of my studio, I'm going to then just take these main lines and draw them back to my vanishing point. So since it's far, this is where the ruler might be a little bit handy for me. So I want to see you draw those lines all the way back to those vanishing points. If you don't, you just make assumptions and you get it wrong. And so we're learning these rules, and these rules can help you, even if you eventually break them. So that corner goes back to this side. This other corner is going to go back to this side. And we'll build our drawing from there. So 2-point perspective always begins with defining the horizon line. This line is implied. That represents the eye line or the line sight of the viewer. So once the horizon line has been established, the vanishing points are placed.
The vanishing point is defined as a point placed on the horizon line where objects begin to disappear because of distance. So a good way of thinking of the vanishing point is by imagining yourself standing on a beach. Looking in both directions, you can see endlessly down the beach. And at some point, people on the beach start walking away from you, will become progressively smaller until they completely disappear on the horizon line. So with 2-point perspective, 2 vanishing points are placed on the horizon line. So these 2 points should be spaced out from each other to prevent distortion. So both vanishing points need not be within the picture plane if you don't wish them to be, just as long as they are found on the horizon line, which continues on off the picture plane in both directions. So if they are not on your drawing page, what you must do is add on additional paper such as newsprint, then continue the horizon line outward and place your points on the line. So when you're first learning perspective, it's very important that you physically and visually map out your horizon, plot your 2 points, and draw all lines receding back to these points. This is a requirement for this drawing and something that I'm expecting to see in the final drawing that you complete. So in your own drawing, once you have one vertical established, which is parallel to the picture plane, you have the other lines that go back to either vanishing point. These lines that recede back in space are called orthogonal lines. So these orthogonal lines are the lines that move from the object to the vanishing points. The purpose of these lines is to set up the visual path to a vanishing point, directing the shape of the object in perspective. Using these lines, everything in the scene will converge at these points, either on the right or the left. Keep in mind that the way a building or object is constructed sometimes defies the rules of perspective. Note that the roof of my studio here is not in fact straight. When you're inside, the ceiling angles upward and is higher on one side of the building than the other. You can see that from the exterior as well. So as a result, the rooftop itself does not go back to the vanishing point because it was built by the architect at its own angle. So if the studio were at a perfect rectangular box, the ceiling top would be parallel to the top of the door and the window that you see here. But since it's not, I have to draw it with its own sort of angled line that does not recede back to either vanishing point. When you have a distorted side of a building going back into space and you need to figure out the center point of the face of that building or any rectangle in perspective, you can do this by drawing an X from corner to corner of the rectangle or square as it is in perspective with the orthogonal lines going back to the vanishing point. You can then draw a line to the vanishing point from the center of that X and outward to find the horizontal center, or you can draw a vertical from the center of that X to find the vertical center. You can also draw an archway or even a circle in this way with knowing the points at which the arch or the circle should touch the side of the distorted square that you drew in perspective. So now I'm going in with my sort of middle range value of color and starting to refine the details. I'm not as worried about having to draw everything back to the vanishing point since I've already established that. But here I'm trying to just really clarify everything so I can make sure that I can see everything in the structure of the building that I drew properly, as well as the sort of planters in front of it, and starting to really kind of make this drawing make a lot more sense so I can see it very well visually.
At this point, you can see me switching to the mid-tone colored pencil to help me clarify the particular edges of the architecture while still allowing me to leave all of my earlier perspective line work within the drawing, no erasing. I use this change in tool to help me clarify the space and make better visual sense of the drawing so that I don't get confused with the various lines that go back one way or the other. So this is where the drawing becomes a bit more fun as I see the space of the architecture begin to come across for me. I also add in a few details like a tree or a shrub for fun. And before I go to my third color of my colored pencil, which will be kind of like my finishing marks, I'm going to just, give the whole drawing a little bit more interest with some bits of color to help define the space more fully and make it more interesting looking. So I've taped down my drawing on all four sides. I've got some water, a little bit of gouache. I've got some dried up gouache. Maybe I'll just use that. Remember, you can re-wet gouache. It doesn't matter if it's been dried up or sitting on your palette for a long time. It's still totally re-wettable and usable. So maybe I'll play around with like bringing in a little bit of greens and things here and there just to enliven the space. I've got some grass going on out here. It could be fun to play around with, might make it interesting. Yeah, I'm kind of liking that. And just play around, see how it goes. Remember, always dip into the water a lot when you use the gouache. I know that perspective might seem like it takes a long time, but when you do things like this, to help you fill out the space and that it's not all just a pencil drawing, you'll find that it goes a lot more quickly for you to make an interesting drawing and give it a little bit of sense of finish. I'm here with my final, like, darkest colored pencil, and then I'm just gonna like refine some details, darken in some areas to give a little bit more sense of space and value. I noticed a couple of things that I might have missed, so I'll add those in.
Hey everybody, so I hope you produce some drawings that you're proud of. The rules of perspective are so easy to learn, and it really helps you to make a stellar drawing with just following some rules. So anyone can be a drawer, so I encourage you to try out this process and practice it, and you can make some really fantastic spaces. So I will catch you next time with my next demo. See ya!